Hey, everybody, welcome back to Indivisible Mid-Peninsula's Courage is Contagious podcast. Today we have as a guest on our show, Kim Gandy. She's a stem cell biologist and a former pediatric cardiac surgeon. Welcome, Kim. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much, caller, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So what would you like to talk about today? What's your passion?
Well, I have a lot of passions, but I think one area that you and I had identified that's probably very pertinent and timely right now would be discussing academic freedom and the things that are happening to what we perceive as academic freedom right now.
Yeah, it's a really important subject.
Yeah, I think so.
So can you define academic freedom for people who don't understand what that is?
Yeah, so I think historically, academic freedom has referred to the ability of students and teachers to express their thoughts and opinions in a way where they were free from censorship or even retribution. I think in the age of social media, that definition has broadened quite a bit as far as what we define as an academic environment. So I think it's much broader than just students and teachers at this point in time. But I think the assaults right now are definitely concentrated towards those in the university environments and even more specifically in those of what have been referred to as the more elite institutions, if there is such a thing.
Mm. And why do you think that is? Why are these institutions being attacked? I mean, I think most people would agree that education is really important. Having access to education at a reasonable cost or even free um, is really important for a strong society.
And I think that's why it's being attacked. And so I think the regime, as I'll call it, as we move through, or the current regime, has identified that education could be one of the biggest threats to what they are trying to do, and that a lack of education will be very important for them continuing to propagate what they are trying to do. And one of the things that we've known through history is that an educated and a prosperous public is much more difficult to influence with propaganda or misinformation. And we have relied, not just in this country, but throughout the world, on education and critical thinking to help people understand what propaganda is and what misinformation is. And it's been very helpful in allowing countries, populations, all in all areas of the world to overcome autocracy or authoritarian regimes.
I know there are some people that believe that because we had such extensive education, such high educational values, free public education, that that's what really made America so great for so long. You know, a great trade partner, brilliant minds in all kinds of fields, put us ahead of other countries in many fields.
Yeah.
So it seems counterintuitive to me that people, especially leaders of our country, would want to attack that. I would think the opposite. I would think you would want to have a really, really well-educated public who can keep the country strong and therefore much more resilient towards attacks from outside the country rather than inside the country.
Well, that would be true if the leaders valued the people in that country and the success or vitality of that country over their own desires. And we've left that realm right now. So we are unfortunately in a position where there's a limited number of people that are predominantly interested in what benefits themselves as opposed to what benefits the masses of our population, and have somehow convinced that very population that they care about them and that they're actually working for their own benefit, which is one of the biggest ironies and one of the biggest disappointments that people don't realize just how much is being done to harm them at the same time they're being told things are being done to help them.
So, what do you feel is the antidote to that? I mean, obviously, it's really important to, because, let's face it, nothing is perfect. Our education system was struggling in many ways,
Mhm.
whether it was teacher retention, whether it was the strength of academic um, strength from the student side, whether it's elementary, middle, college. There were definitely challenges. However, it seems like there were plenty of people trying to make those better.
Yeah,
So, how can we, in our current situation, 2025, how can we strengthen and even protect those institutions from being weakened, being destroyed, being left behind?
those are all such great questions, right? If we knew the exact formulas, I don't think we'd be in the position that we're in. But I do think most of us have opinions about things that we could do better. Figuring out how to do those things better is the, $100 million, 1 million, 1,000, whatever you want to call it, dollar questions. It's always such a joke to put sort of prices on those things, but let's just say invaluable question. Um, but I think one of the biggest things that's been lost is the trust between the various sort of areas. And there's a lot of mistrust now of the elite institutions, of what we call academics. And that's something that's been that there some of the reasons for that are the gaps that are in our society, the gaps that some people perceive as their inability to reach those levels of education, that there are things that are outside of their reach. And I think that's one of the things that's missing. And then the other thing is just in the ideal sense, I mean, a- academic institutions um, should be serving the populace from which we originate, right? That should be the whole reason that academic institutions are here. It's not just to write books, that a few will read, right? It's literally to foster the ideas, to keep in touch with the people. That used to be what we all counted on, was that kids are going to go off to these schools, are going to be exposed to new ideas at the same time that they're still in touch with where they came from, and they're going to do things to change the world and to make it all a better place for all. That was what the vision of the academic pursuit used to be, and that we would embrace people coming from all over the world. Those ideas would mingle, and we'd get better ideas about how to approach and make this a better place for all. I still believe very strongly in that kind of a vision. Um, but I think it has been lost to a great number of people. And so I think we're going to have to work very hard to restore that. And some of the ways are truly technical. I mean, there has been a an onslaught against what we perceive as those sort of educational ideas in social media by other countries, and to deny that that's been there, we're missing the boat. There have been politicians, we won't go into their names, that have been saying this has been happening for over a decade, and I think part of it was we thought we could overcome it, and we're such, we're such a strong country, that's not going to weaken us. And I think part of it was just not believing it was there, that it must be some conspiracy. But there has been an attention to social media that many of us, maybe because of the ivory tower, haven't taken seriously enough. And social media is just so easy to get misinformation out, as well as information that just appeals to some of our basest instincts. In other words, it's been used to foster hatred, it's been used to foster division. And when those feelings can be capitalized upon to make somebody feel like that the pain that they're feeling right now is because of another population, that's a very hard thing to overcome. And so I think one of the things that our academic institutions need to do is to accept this as part of their charge, is to help us figure out how to combat this, and not only that, how to do it. I personally believe that we should be having, classes where kids are getting together and basically getting out there and fighting some of the information. I think that should be, the same as reading, writing, and arithmetic at this point in time, if we're going to get out of this, because the amount of misinformation and the control over it right now is so large that it's going to take a huge effort to and coordinated effort to overcome that.
Hmm.
I obviously have pretty uh I mean it's pretty easy to see where my opinions are as far as these things, but I think we've just got some big battles. I mean, I am far from a social media expert, but I'm willing to try to do whatever it takes to figure out how to get us out of here. And data's data. When 50 to 70% of our population are getting their news online, it's time to make a change. I mean, that's just clear to me. And so I'm willing to. I will consider myself a constant academic if academic means trying to learn new things. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes to try to learn new things to sort of, advance these missions onward.
Which level of education do you feel is in the biggest danger right now? Are we talking elementary school? Are we talking university level?
Wow, what a great question. Because it's kind of at risk in so many different areas, right? And some of it's sort of long term and some of it's short term. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think there's anybody at risk more than our younger children right now. I mean,
Hmm.
they're whole areas of content are being removed from some of their curricula that are part of our history. And teachers are afraid to teach empathy for diversity now in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And that's a critical problem. I mean, I've already seen it for, a while now that people were getting nervous about in conservative areas, and I just moved from one. They were getting nervous about discussing, things that were considered controversial. They would discuss them, and parents would call in about how can this be discussed in class, et cetera. And so I think younger children are definitely at risk from the mindset that we have now been overcome with. And then obviously, so it happens through all sort of, areas. But then in colleges where, in universities where we were used to kids getting out of the home and getting their first freedom, even if they had been raised and steeped in an entirely in a mindset that they would have the opportunity and capacity to adopt another one if that resonated with them. Um, those opportunities are being decreased now. And that's a big thing because that was always a very liberating thing for so many people that really found that ability to get out of the environments in which they grew up. And that's why it's being targeted, right? So
Now, how is that how is that becoming different?
than it has been. How is it
Right.
becoming different? Yeah, well, I mean, I think clearly some institutions are being told the courses they can teach and can't. Entire departments of diversity are being shut down. Entire departments where the history and the culture of different regions of the country, are being defunded and professors are being let go. I think it's element after element, starting off with what the most high profile institutions At least I thought it was starting off with the most high profile institutions because those are the ones that I'm seeing. But, after reading more about it today, it's actually happening in many of the more conservative institutions. We're just not hearing about it because it's being done without much fight. And so, work that had been done in some of those institutions to diversify their, what was being introduced in education, has been obliterated without even as much as a whimper. And so that's a huge loss, for those communities because there were, islands of critical thought, even in the most conservative universities. And every opportunity, all those opportunities, every effort is being made to squash that right now.
So if we say that the most vulnerable population at this point, obviously it's a complex issue, and most age groups are at risk. But if we
Yes.
say the most vulnerable are the younger kids, what can parents do to try to insulate their children from this attack on education?
Well, I mean, parents can continue to educate at home. I mean, I can tell you that if they have that capacity, and if they don't, they can, if they can just make the potential available to their kids for online learning and learn where they can get access to those materials, they can still on June 3rd, 2025, get access to those materials online. So, in other words, even if they're not getting, a full diversified education at school, they can get some of that at home. And for most kids, if you just light a fire, in a kid, just give them like a kernel of inspiration or something of that sort, they'll gravitate towards it. Kids in general do want to learn new things, but for the most part, it has to be interesting to them. It has to have been made interesting to them, or they have to see a connection for why it would be important. And that is an art of teaching, but there are actually some pretty spectacular teachers online. I'll give a little non sequitur because it was actually pretty interesting for me, but and it is going to sound elitist again, but I was watching the commencement speech at MIT this past weekend, and it was given by a guy named Hank Green. And I don't know if the people that will listen to this podcast will know who he is or not, but he was a guy that was in our house a lot when our daughter grew up. And he had all these podcasts on all these different areas of science, and he was really dynamic, and he's, has all these graphics, and he's a very animated personality, and they were short, and he'd get in and he'd give these sort of lessons. And anybody in the world could see this. They were free. He made them free. This was one of his missions, to make them free. And and he's a very transparent guy. He subsequently got sick. He had cancer. He walked through that with all these kids. So these kids that were in college, that were graduating from MIT, a lot of these kids went through middle school, high school with Hank Green, and also watched him fight cancer. To the point that he was standing up there today giving, that, or not today, but last week, giving that commencement speech. And I thought it was, a very well received one, and a very nice one. But it was just somebody that had taken these kids all over the world on a scientific journey in a way that, I mean, this guy taught our kids so many things that we didn't know anything about, but we'd sit and we'd watch, right? With her. So, anyway, that was a huge digression, but that's one of the things parents can do, is just figure out where those resources are and make it available to their kids, regardless of what's available in their school every day.
I remember back in my day, it was like Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Yeah, yeah, he's still out there. Yeah, yeah.
And for my kids, the Magic School Bus.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's so many out there,
Yes.
honestly.
and they're important. I'm old enough that Sesame Street was one of them, right? And so,
Oh, yeah, Sesame Street.
what's going on with that is a pretty big deal for emotionally for some of us, and I think that's another reason it's being done, right? So,
The
yeah.
Kratt brothers were also really good at that. They had a various cartoons. They had some, you know, do you know the Kratt brothers? They had
Oh, I
Kratt
don't actually.
creatures.
Yeah,
They had a number of different ones that evolved over time. They had
sure,
Zaboomafoo.
sure.
It was a lot of fun.
I think that looking back on it too, I mean, Hank probably taught a lot of empathy through himself, right?
Mm,
With these kids like starting to realize, oh my gosh, because some of them, my daughter had already seen, cancer in her own family, but a lot of kids hadn't. So I think this was somebody close to them that was having an effect. But um, in my era, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, all those kind of sort of programs definitely had education, but part of that education was as humanity and empathy. And
mm,
I think that
right.
is a big part of one of the things that we're missing, now. And anyway, it's because it's when I watch some of the things that are being done now and without even flinching. I can't imagine how that could be done unless this individual didn't have one, atom of empathy in their whole body, right? So,
How about teachers? I know teachers have had a really tough time for a lot of reasons, but
yep,
now even more is put on them
yep,
because obviously teachers are an amazing group of people. Most of them go into education because they love teaching, they love their students, whether they're elementary school, high school, college. They love their students. They have a lot put on them now. But what advice do you have for teachers as they're going through this?
that's a tough one because it is so hard for teachers right now. Uh, and more than advice for teachers, which I will get back to, but I have advice for us as a general population that we should support teachers more, which I think actually other cultures do much better than we do. One of my personal biases at the two of the populations that are the most valuable and yet the most undervalued in American culture are teachers and scientists and two of the critical pillars upon which our society is based. So teachers are in touch with our children from the very early age and mold our children's minds and personalities and hearts in such critical ways. And yet, we as a society can't put more value on that. And it's really a hard thing for me to understand. And every time you read one of these stories about a teacher with their minimal salary that goes to buy the school supplies out of their own salary for kids, you're kind of like, I mean, how are we in this sort of a position? But the only thing that I could say to sort of teachers is that we do value you, and there are some of us that think there couldn't be anything more important. And, I think we need to do a better job of telling them how grateful we are. And I think they're just, some of them are, rallying, et cetera. Now, unfortunately, not really going to be that much of a thing, but I think there is going to come a time when they have to raise their voices about how important they are and actually ask their students to do so for them and the parents to do so for them as well. And I think that's part of the reason that we're in this problem right now. I think if we had a better appreciation of our teachers, then I think we'd be in a much different position right now.
Do you feel like if enough students, let me backtrack. Do you feel like if enough parents and enough teachers and enough administrators call foul, that we can get to a quicker, more positive resolution of this? If if the majority of the people that I just mentioned stand up and say, no, we're not doing this. We're not putting up with this.
And this is a hugely interesting point. So I think, and I'm no expert, so I'm just, but my thoughts are that we're going to have to do that at the college level before we're going to be able to do that at the earlier education levels, just because of pure numbers. The college age kids, a significant portion of those can vote.
Mm,
The younger kids cannot vote. So
right.
that's just, that's already half your numbers now out of the effector sort of population, if you will. And so that's why they are so nervous about college, right? Because they can vote, right? So if they get mobilized when they vote and they're in the streets, et cetera, that's a pretty powerful population. And so I personally, I understand the fear, right? So I understand the fear that college students have, uh, that academic professors have right now. I have lots of friends that are in that fear category. Um, I don't feel that the way for us to bring those people into our movement right now is to make them feel guilty about that fear, because it is real. And so I think we have to realize that they're scared, that there are reasons that they're scared, embrace that fear, and help them move through it and beyond it. I think that's what we have to do, and create safe spaces where where we build that trust that we're already talking about, that hey, we might not have all the answers, but we really want to do everything we can to give you a safe space to participate in this movement. And whether that's in helping us craft the message, whether that's engaging on social media. Yes, it's great if they're out giving speeches and mobilizing students and et cetera. But if it's not, if there are other ways that we can sort of build that trust and bring them into the movement, I think that's going to be a critical sort of piece of all this.
Which universities are you inspired by right now? Which ones are
Harvard. I mean, Harvard sort of comes to top of mind. I mean, I'll be honest, I was one of those kids that just thought, Harvard was the moon when I was growing up, and I grew up in a family that thought it wasn't, right? So
that Harvard was what?
I thought it was the moon, right? So I
Oh,
thought
the
it's the
moon.
moon
Okay.
in the old days where the moon was a long way away, right? And because I would watch these paper chase and things like that when I was a kid, where these people would go into these rooms and these brilliant people would exchange ideas, and I was like, wow, how cool is that, right? Um, but I also came from a family that considered that in the bottom of Georgia, right? So I came from a small town in the bottom of Georgia, that was considered elitism, and that why would somebody want to go to school there? I mean, my dad wouldn't even fill out the forms, right? So it
Hmm.
was, it's so I get sort of both sort of arms on it, but whenever I watched some of the commencement speeches from Harvard this weekend, and I should have the woman's name. It's bad that I don't off the top of on the tip of my tongue, but there was a young woman that was from the International Studies group that gave a speech that was just breathtaking and so heartfelt about what she gained from coming over to be an international student at Harvard, and what international students could give to the world and to the community. And it was breathtaking, and it was wonderful that that community embraced that in that way. And yeah, it was just phenomenal.
Was
And
this the student from Mongolia?
yes, yeah, yeah. So
I normally don't watch commencement speeches, but I did happen to see that one
yeah,
and the beginning of the one that Hank gave. So I was
yes.
it was nice to hear someone else talking about it, but yeah, she was fantastic.
Yeah, she was fantastic, and it was a well delivered speech and well received, and I shared it widely. So when I see something like that, I'm like, I'm getting this baby out.
I was personally never in the running for any type of Harvard style education. However, a few years back, I think it was during COVID, when educational opportunities started to come online a little bit more frequently, I did take a course, a Harvard course online, which at the time was free. And then if you
Yeah,
wanted a certificate, it was like $15.
probably a
Those
Coursera
cases
or
are
an
gone.
edX thing. Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah.
opportunity is gone. Now, if you do the same thing, it's going to cost a pretty penny. But I have to say that, um, and I did go to college. I did go to medical school to become a podiatrist. And in all the educational opportunities I had, it was really amazing to be in a Harvard class because the type of thinking and the expansiveness of the thinking was just next level. And it
Yeah.
was really a lot of fun to participate. I wish they would have more free opportunities like that so that everybody could get a taste of it.
They just launched one on US government right now. So
Oh, I'm gonna have to check
yeah,
that out. It's
yeah,
free?
and yeah, it's free. It's free for everybody, and they're promoting it wildly on Facebook. So I literally am in Facebook for like 1 minute, and it's coming up. So I do hope to get in there, but it's about U.S. Constitution, and obviously it's probably going to go into things that are happening right now that are not consistent with our U.S. Constitution. But I mean, that's a huge sort of service. I, like you, also have done a lot of these sort of free courses sort of over the years. I mean, I think they're just hugely valuable. And in in response to your question about what some of these groups can do, I think that's exactly what they can do and what they should do is to
Mm.
continue to make courses, economics, engineering, the whole thing. They should make them available for free. So no
I
matter
think
what,
doesn't MIT have that? Doesn't MIT
at an
give
edX
free
type of thing, it
courses?
does. And so there are free courses that a lot of places have. And I think, but I bet you a lot of people don't know about them, right? And
I
so I
bet, yeah.
think I think making that more available to everybody so that they're not just like, oh, that's just an elite education. Well, you know what? You can actually do this. If you, it's not like it's only available. I mean, yes, I do think that the whole concept about people that have worked hard in high school and, middle school and have great grades and have earned those opportunities to go to those elite institutions, that should still exist, that people that have done that work. Um, because there is something definitively of benefit of being in person, with those people.
Hmm.
And I think they have earned those opportunities and should be able to experience them in person and change the world and turn around and then make it available to other people. And I think that doing those kind of things will decrease a lot of these gaps that we're talking about that are causing many of the problems that are before us.
Yeah, I remember even when my one of my children was in first grade, one of the teachers made a point that we're not promoting the non-academic opportunities like we should, like the plumbers and the electricians and all that, because those are extremely important and we need people to do those, and those should be looked on, in my opinion, as highly as all of these other types of
It's just a different way of
professions.
living a life, and we need it all, right? So I think um, I think we have to understand people are going to have different passions,
Mm-hmm.
and even different passions at different points in life. I mean, I've known many people that got interested in, what we would call the academic sort of phase of life in their 40s after having other careers, right? So
Right.
I think that's the beauty about today's world, especially what we're talking about with all the online stuff, et cetera, is that there's really no end to whenever you can go get the academic, education, if you will. So,
Mm-hmm.
with the opportunities, the only thing that keeps one from doing that are time and desire, right? So I do,
And money.
not, it, what and money.
And money in some
Well,
cases,
this
yeah.
is what I'm saying. If we make that available free, right? If
Oh,
it's
right.
available free and online, and I think a lot of it is, but I think that needs to happen more, and that would be sort of like an ideal world for me, where the ones that want to learn can learn and can learn continuously. Uh,
Hmm.
and is it hard to do that when you're tired all the time? You bet. Is it almost impossible to do it when you have three jobs? You bet. And so there are definitely, some people that aren't going to be able to do it, unfortunately, in the current way the world is. But if we could figure out a way to get that message out early, that if they can do it before they have to take their third job, that would definitely be the way to go.
And that, yeah, we could go into a whole another podcast about, especially America should not be a country where you have to have three jobs to just be able to afford the basics of
Yeah,
life.
yeah, that would be
But we can save that for another podcast.
that would be an important but definitely a critical. Um, yeah,
Otherwise, this podcast will never end. We'll just keep,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hitting
Well, I mean,
things that need to be talked about.
yeah, as when you were talking about, people that sort of love education, uh, Robert Reich is a teacher, a retired teacher, retired dean, even an economist in a former political administration that just talks about the way he loves to teach and that he loves to and he just in it they are I think there's going to be a new thing released on his last class where they go through sort of his last classes and how much he sort of loved to teach. But um, just the resistance to the increasing the minimum wage, and he led one of those, sort of campaigns to increase the minimum wage, and got one of those increases in a Republican Congress, right? I mean, I think, yeah, there's just some basic stuff that should be happening, but anyway.
Now, going back to Harvard, much like you, I was really encouraged by Harvard taking a stand. What other universities are joining in with Harvard?
Yeah, so um, I worry about mentioning too many of them, like for setting new sort of targets.
Okay, never mind then. Never mind.
But I mean, um, Berkeley's always been involved, right? I mean, I don't think they've ever and that's sort of part of their DNA, right? It's not like they're doing anything controversial. It's just, they've always been a leader in any sort of resistance movements. We're more familiar with some of the ones that aren't sort of, meeting those goals than, the ones that are. And other ones in the Bay Area are just starting to tip their toe in the waters. But my particular bias in this whole thing is this is honestly one of the other things that the academic institutions should be. We rely on academic institutions as a barrier to autocracies. That's one of our lines of defense. We talk about the three co-equal branches of government, and but we rely on academic institutions such as these higher levels of universities to sound the alarm bells, to say, guys, you might not see it yet, but history tells us that when we cross this line, this is a big deal, right? And that's what we need the academic institutions to do. I say that, but I know they're now weighing the benefits versus the drawbacks because so much confidence has been lost in them, right? So if they see that they're going to get out and do this and that it's not going to really move the needle and they're still going to get hit, then I think that could be one way that sort of keeps them from getting active. But Hakeem Jefferson, an assistant professor in our area, gave a speech last week where he was basically, saying that um, lack of academic institutions getting involved at this point is going to prevent us from getting out of this. And that there's no way to avoid the backlash, which most of these guys are all saying, right? Because that's what happens with the bully, right? If you stay silent because of something, they're going to hit you anyway. If they think you're a target, like if they think, and if you're not at risk, a risk to them, if you're not a risk to changing students' minds to be a barrier to democracy, then why aren't you? You know? So I think it's a pretty critical question.
Well, I also think in regard to bullies and specifically is they like to pick on people that don't fight back.
Yeah,
If you fight back, there's a better chance of beating the bully.
I think I fully agree with you. Um, it
Can
reminds
can
me of
we
us.
can we pause for 1 second?
You bet.
Just- Okay, where were we? I think we had just been talking about Harvard
Talking
and
about what? We had a bark that happened right there.
we had just been talking about Harvard, but I think we were at the kind of at the end of that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so let me just go on to my next question. So what gives you hope?
Um, what gives me hope is participating in activities with other people and kind of feeling the power and enthusiasm. Um, what gives me hope is watching reports of other people mobilizing all over the country. Um, what gives me hope is the fact that it appears that those numbers are increasing week after week, and that people are standing up more and more to the things that are happening. The courage contagious is contagious thing I very much believe in, and I think we're very much seeing the fruits of that. And this is going to sound really sort of counterproductive and negative, but another thing that gives me hope is, in all honesty, how incompetent the current regime is. So, if they weren't messing up so many things, um, this would be a much bigger, um, thing to overcome. But I think that there have been so many things that have been done that are just illegal that if we're able to preserve our court system, we should be able to overthrow. That gives me significant amount of hope.
Now, what can regular people do? I mean, we've talked about the teachers and the parents and the professors.
And so when we're talking about what can regular people do for, and I'm going to put them all together. So both
Hmm.
for academic freedom and for defending our democracy, because I think they go hand in hand.
Okay.
I think that regular people can continue to be informed on a daily basis and can dig in for the courage to get informed. A lot of people uh, don't even like to watch the news because they find it too overwhelming.
Hmm.
But we need people to find that courage to at least watch what is happening, to at least be informed about what is happening. And that can be a stepwise process. I'm not saying that somebody has to do that every day. I talk to a lot of people about how to do this. Even at Indivisible meetings, people have voiced concerns about how do I do this. It's too overwhelming when I look at the news. Um, and that may be that you start by just listening, I mean, just reading Heather Cox Richardson's, letter every day. That's something a lot of people, it's much less anxiety provoking if they read something as opposed to, listening to the news. But just allocate a small sort of period of time to read about something that is happening and get a source that you trust to do that and that matches your sensitivities. So staying informed is one thing. Getting involved with a group is another. So whether you do that remotely, whether you do that in person, you pick your own pace and how you want to do that. There are a variety of different ways to protect the protection, the anonymity that you want. There are ways to do that as well, and do that as you feel like you need at this point in time. But I can tell you that there are few things as empowering as engaging with a group of like minded people in a protest activity and then seeing the results of that protest activity having an impact. Whether that's even slowing down, a path of legislation or just increasing the number of people that are resisting it. Um, That's a very empowering thing. Even engaging in something that has a visual impact that you can show to the world that, we're resisting this is a very empowering thing. And I think those are some of the things that people can do. In science and health, we're launching a lot of activities and trying to develop them to not only engage where we are, because let's face it, we're kind of fortunate. We're in California and there are a lot of like-minded people in our area. I just moved from Kansas. I can tell you there are groups of people there that they're fighting the fight, but they are not in the majority. And my hat goes off to them and my heart goes out to them sort of every day when because I'm still attached to a lot of these people in social media feeds when I see, what they're doing and how they're doing it. And, groups like us can reach out to groups like that to help. And I think there are ways that we can do that. And we're working on some of those right now.
I love all of that.
Cool. Yeah, well, I have to say I feel very fortunate to be part of Indivisible. So I looked around for a lot of different groups to be involved with, and I like the leadership that Ezra and Leah have provided. I like the way that they engage people. I like the way that they allow it to be open. I like that they're so informed. I like that they have a weekly thing where they answer questions every week. And I love the capacity to have multiple chapters, in different areas and for them to be able to form coalitions. So yeah, and I'm also aware of how fortunate I am to be able to be involved in a group like this. And so yeah, there you go. I
Yeah,
like
I'm
being
also,
involved with people like you. I'm very fortunate. I realize I'm very fortunate to meet the people that I've met through Indivisible. So
I have to agree with you there. It's been amazing since I've joined Indivisible and met so many amazing people with so many diverse ideas and topics.
yeah, yeah, it's
It's a
nice.
lot.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for being on the show.
thank you so much. Yeah, it's been really nice speaking with you. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Stay on, stay on.
Okay.